Just imagine every fear you felt, every moment of doubt, every anxious thought that's ever whispered. You can't. What if those moments weren't mistakes? What if they weren't failures? What if they were messages? Not messages to keep you small, but clues. Clues leading you inward, towards something powerful, towards something deeply and undeniably you. What if the struggles that haunt you, the ones you fight or run from, are actually guiding you toward purpose? Not just any purpose, but your purpose. Sit with that. What if the parts of yourself you've tried to ignore, the thoughts you've silenced, the emotions you've buried, the memories that feel too raw to revisit, were not signs of weakness, but invitations? Invitations to meet the version of you that's been waiting beneath the noise. Today is not about empty inspiration. This is not another motivational speech. This is a descent into the layers beneath the surface, to the very place where your truth has been hiding. Together, we'll uncover something many never dare to face, not because it's dangerous, but because it's real. We'll explore one of the most transformative ideas to emerge in the world of psychology and philosophy, Carl Jung's theory of the shadow. But this isn't about textbooks or theories. This is about you, your life, your experiences, your unexplored depth, because the shadow isn't just a concept. It's a living part of you, and the more you ignore it, the louder it knocks. Throughout this journey, we won't just study the shadow. We'll listen to it, understand it, begin to see it not as a threat, but as a teacher. By the time we're done, you won't just recognize your shadow. You'll understand how it quietly holds a key to your strength, your freedom, your purpose, and at the very end, you'll come face to face with a revelation, one that has the power to shift your entire life. A truth so deep, so clear, you'll wonder how you ever live without it. So, take a breath. Let go of the need to have the answers right now. You don't need to know. You just need to listen. Because sometimes the most important journey isn't out into the world, but to the places we've been too afraid to go. And that's where we're headed. Let's begin. Carl Jung, one of the founding voices of depth psychology, believed that every person carries a hidden side, a part of us that doesn't fit the image we want to show the world, a part we're often taught to reject, deny, or hide. He called it the shadow. It's made up of everything we think is unacceptable. Our anger, our jealousy, our fears, even our deepest desires. Not just the obviously dark stuff, but anything that doesn't match who we believe we should be. Over time, this shadow becomes a collection of what we've pushed away, not because it has no value, but because we were afraid of what it might reveal. We label certain traits as bad. We convince ourselves that feeling rage or envy or pride makes us wrong, and so we lock them away. We pretend they're not part of us. But Jung didn't see the shadow as something evil. He saw it as essential, not only a part of who we are, but a key to becoming whole. Strangely enough, within the shadow lie our greatest gifts. Hidden in the dark corners are the roots of our passion, our power, our unique voice. The shadow is like a seed, buried, yes, but alive, waiting for light. So ask yourself, how often have you ignored an instinct, suppressed a reaction, because you thought it wasn't nice enough or wise enough or spiritual enough? How often have you judged someone only to realize later that they reflected something in you? Maybe it's a trait you don't want to see. Maybe it's a longing you've tried to suppress. But the reaction is intense for a reason. Because, as Jung wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This isn't just about darkness. It's about potential. The energy we buried doesn't disappear. It waits. And the longer it's hidden, the more it shapes our thoughts, our relationships, our choices, without us even realizing it. But once we become aware, truly aware, we begin to reclaim that energy. And in doing so, we step closer to our full, honest self. So look inward, not with shame, but with curiosity. Because the parts of you you've disowned might just be the pieces that make you powerful. What we suppress doesn't disappear. It quietly shapes everything we do. Up next, we'll talk about how accepting these parts of ourselves can lead to real inner wholeness. Carl Jung believed something radical, that healing doesn't come from pretending to be whole. It comes from becoming whole. And to become whole, we must stop dividing ourselves into pieces. He called this process individuation, a journey not toward perfection, but toward authenticity, a return to the self, not the filtered, polished version, but the complete being beneath the masks. Most of us live behind a persona, the face we show to others. We build it over years, from what we've been praised for, what we've been told is acceptable, what helps us fit in. But behind that mask is a voice we often silence, an identity we've never fully claimed. Individuation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finally meeting the one you've always been. But make no mistake, this journey isn't easy. It asks for more than motivation. It demands courage. The kind of courage that walks willingly into discomfort, that faces the unknown without guarantees, that looks into the mirror and doesn't turn away, even when what it sees is raw, contradictory, or painful. You'll be asked to unlearn the roles you've played, to question the stories you've inherited, to listen deeply to what your shadow has been trying to say, because within your shadow are not just wounds. There are clues, symbols, truths that your conscious mind couldn't bear, but your soul still remembers. Jung didn't believe in silencing the shadow. He believed in integrating it, bringing it up from the depths, and weaving it into your conscious life. This means owning your flaws, without shame, recognizing your desires, without judgment, facing your pain, without turning it into identity. When we do this, when we allow the shadow to sit at the table, instead of banishing it to the basement, something extraordinary happens. We stop being fragmented. We begin to act from a place of unity. We stop chasing validation and start trusting our inner compass. Think about it. All the energy we spend trying to fix ourselves, what if it wasn't about fixing, but remembering who we are, beneath the noise, beneath the labels, beneath the fear. Individuation is not about becoming light and love all the time. It's about holding both the light and the shadow, and realizing that together they form your humanity. This is not a destination. There's no final version of you to achieve, only layer after layer of uncovering, meeting, integrating. And each time you do, you become more grounded, more real, more powerful in a way that no external force can touch. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop performing? Are you ready to stop hiding behind what's comfortable and start becoming who you actually are? Because the shadow doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits, and when embraced, it doesn't consume you, it completes you. This is individuation, and it's one of the bravest things a human being can do. At a certain point, understanding is no longer enough. It's time to act. In the next episode, we'll look at concrete practices that help turn insight into lived experience. Awareness is the beginning, but awareness alone isn't transformation. Knowing about the shadow is not the same as meeting it. To truly integrate what's been buried, you have to engage with it directly, honestly, gently, and that starts with one essential thing: radical self-honesty. This isn't the kind of honesty we show in polite conversations. It's not about confessing to others. It's about facing yourself, without flinching, without excuses, without filters. Can you say to yourself, I feel jealous, without rushing to deny it? Can you admit, I sometimes manipulate to feel in control, without coding it in justification? That kind of truth-telling is uncomfortable, but it's also freeing, because once you name something, it loses its grip. What lives in shadow only controls us when we avoid looking at it. So start simple. Begin by noticing your emotional triggers, moments when your reaction feels bigger than the situation, the kind of anger that surprises even you, the fear that hits like a wave without warning, or even admiration, when someone else's confidence makes you feel both inspired and strangely irritated. Pause. Ask yourself, why this reaction? What nerve has been touched? Is this really about them, or is it about me? Often, these moments are mirrors. They reflect back the pieces of us we've hidden or denied, and every mirror is a chance, a doorway into deeper self-knowledge. Another powerful tool is dialogue with the shadow. Jung often encourages patients to engage with their shadow like it was another person. Strange? Maybe, but incredibly effective. Picture this. You sit across from your shadow, and you ask it calmly, what are you trying to protect me from? Or, what are you afraid I'll become if I listen to you? You might be surprised at what comes up. Sometimes it's not anger or chaos. It's sadness, or a desperate need to be seen, or a childhood wound still bleeding under years of silence. You can do this through journaling. Write without censorship. Let the shadow speak. Not to shame you, but to help you understand why it's there. Visualization also works. Close your eyes. Picture your shadow, not as a monster, but as a part of you frozen in time. Maybe it looks like a younger version of yourself. Maybe it's shaped by fear, guilt, or longing. Ask it, what do you need? What have I been refusing to hear? Even dreams can be messengers, symbols, visions, unfiltered truths that bypass your conscious mind. Jung devoted much of his work to the exploration of dreams. He believed they held coded messages from the unconscious, stories that your waking self was too guarded to tell. So keep a dream journal. Track what images repeat, which emotions rise, what characters return again and again. Your unconscious may be speaking in symbols, but it is speaking. You only have to listen. Most importantly, practice compassion for yourself, for your messiness, for your resistance. This work is not about fixing. It's about relating. You're not battling a flaw. You're reconnecting with a lost part of your soul. The more you practice this inner awareness, the more your outer life begins to shift. Your decisions come from clarity, not compulsion. Your relationships deepen. You begin to walk differently, not because you're perfect, but because you're present. You're no longer fragmented. You're no longer ashamed of your edges. You're learning to hold the full spectrum of who you are, and that's where the transformation truly begins. As we learn to see ourselves more clearly, we inevitably start to see others differently too. The next part explores how the shadow shows up in our reactions, projections, and relationships. There's a curious thing that happens when we avoid a part of ourselves. We begin to see it in everyone else. That's the phenomenon Jung called projection, when we unconsciously transfer the traits we reject in ourselves onto other people. It's not malicious. It's not even conscious. It's protective. We see someone being loud and label them arrogant when really we're wrestling with a part of us that wants to be heard but is afraid to speak up. We meet someone driven, confident, unbothered, and feel a flicker of judgment. Why? Because they reflect something we've buried, the desire to take up space, to stop apologizing for existing, to want more and not feel guilty for it. The truth is, what you hate most in others often lives in you, not in a threatening way, but in a way that begs for awareness. Projection is the mirror the world holds up to us, not to shame us, but to teach us, to reflect what we haven't yet made peace with. Jung put it simply, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. We think we're angry at them, but sometimes we're angry at the parts of us we've silenced and they've dared to express. Now look at your relationships. Think about someone who triggers you, who just seems to get under your skin. A colleague who always wants to be right. A partner who avoids conflict. A friend who always needs validation. Ask yourself, why that reaction? Why them? Is it possible that you're not reacting to their behavior, but to something inside yourself that resonates too closely? This isn't about blame. This isn't about fault. It's about discovering the hidden threads that connect your emotions to your inner world, because the people around you, they're not just random characters in your life. They are symbols, reflective surfaces, and sometimes they become the messengers of your shadow. But here's the good news. Every projection is a chance to reclaim a part of yourself, to notice the echo and trace it back to the source. You get to ask, what is this trying to teach me? What part of me have I denied that this person has awakened? And when you answer honestly, the energy of that reaction shifts. The resentment begins to soften. The judgment turns into curiosity. You no longer need people to be different. You need to understand why they affect you the way they do. This is how relationships evolve, not by fixing others, but by becoming more aware of yourself through them. Every conflict, every friction point, every emotional reaction that feels outsized or irrational is an invitation to see what's still unresolved and to bring it into the light. And as you do, something incredible happens. You start to see others with more compassion. You begin to recognize their shadows, not with fear or judgment, but with empathy, because you face your own. And that changes everything. Now your connections aren't based on performance. They're based on presence. You stop playing roles. You stop needing masks. You start showing up as all of you, and you allow others to do the same. That's the power of this work. It doesn't just make you more self-aware. It makes you more human, more capable of real intimacy, more open to love that is honest and alive. So next time someone sparks a strong emotion in you, stop. Don't just react. Ask, what are they showing me about me? Because in that moment, you have a choice to judge the mirror or to finally look into it. Not everything we suppress is weakness. Sometimes it's the very source of our power. Next, we'll uncover how the shadow can fuel creativity, strength, and a deeper sense of purpose. Let's shift the lens. Until now, we've spoken of the shadow as something to explore, to confront, to integrate. But what if it's more than that? What if the shadow isn't just a place of healing, but a source of creation? What if the very parts of you you've buried, your raw instincts, your unruly emotions, your unfiltered desires, aren't just wounds to be addressed, but fuel? Fuel for your art, fuel for your voice, fuel for your purpose. Think about it. How much energy does it take to hide who you are? To pretend? To perform every day, pushing down your anger, your longing, your dreams that don't fit the mold? That energy doesn't vanish. It builds. It waits. And one day, if you let it, it erupts. not as destruction, but as expression. Some of the world's most powerful creators, artists, writers, visionaries, didn't shine in spite of their shadow. They shone because of it. Frida Kahlo painted her pain. James Baldwin wrote his rage. Nina Simone sang her defiance. Each of them reached into the darkest places within and pulled out gold. Their brilliance wasn't polished. It was honest. And that honesty, that's what moved people. That's what created revolutions in art, in thought, in society. Now ask yourself, what part of you have you silenced? Because it felt too much? Too emotional? Too intense? Too strange? Too bold? What if that is your edge? What if that is where your gift lives? You see, we're often told to find our purpose by looking outside. Follow trends. Find what sells. Mimic what's already working. But Jung would say, your purpose isn't out there. It's in here, in the places you've been afraid to look, in the feelings that keep returning, in the ideas that won't leave you alone, in the obsessions that both terrify and thrill you. Your shadow holds your blueprint because it contains the very pieces of you that the world hasn't tamed. And those pieces, they're pure, untouched by expectation, unfiltered by fear, still connected to your truth. And when you reclaim them, when you stop censoring the parts of you that are wild, that are contradictory, that are alive, you unlock a kind of creative force that no one can teach you and no one can take from you. This doesn't mean every emotion becomes a masterpiece or that chaos is the goal. It means you allow yourself to feel fully, to express truthfully, to create from a place that is whole, not polished, but real. You stop creating for approval and start creating because you must, because something inside you refuses to stay silent any longer. And in that space, you meet your purpose, not as a career title, not as a 5-step plan, but as an inner alignment, a fire, a knowing that this is what you were made to offer. And that offering, it doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be big. Purpose is not about spotlight. It's about alignment, living in a way that includes all of you, not just the parts that others find easy to accept. Maybe your purpose is to write what no one else dares to write, or to speak what others only think. Maybe it's to raise a child in a radically conscious way, or to heal something ancestral that has lived in silence for generations. Whatever it is, you will only find it when you stop hiding the parts of you that don't fit the mold. Your rage, your shame, your desire, your grief. These are not barriers. They are gateways. They are the very signs that point to the edge, where the real you begins. So go there, pick up the brush, open the notebook, speak the thing you were told never to say, dance the movement that doesn't make sense, create without permission, live without apology, because in the place where your shadow meets your truth, that's where purpose is born. But strength alone isn't enough to realize our potential. Honesty is just as important. Coming up, we'll see why real transformation begins where we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. There comes a moment on every journey inward when you stop trying to fix yourself and begin to simply see yourself, not the version you curated, not the mask you've worn for survival, but the full, unfiltered truth. This is a turning point, the place where healing begins to deepen, not because everything gets better, but because everything becomes real. And it all starts with vulnerability. You see, vulnerability isn't about oversharing. It's not about spilling your pain to strangers or announcing your flaws like badges. It's something quieter, more sacred. It's the choice to be honest, even when it makes you feel exposed, even when it makes your voice shake. It's looking into the mirror and saying, this is who I am, the whole of me, the beauty and the bruises. And I'm not hiding anymore. Most people think vulnerability is weakness, but it's the opposite. It's one of the rarest forms of strength because it means standing inside your own shadow without flinching. It means saying, yes, I carry anger. Yes, I felt shame. Yes, I fear my own depth. And yet, I am still worthy. I am still whole. That kind of honesty dismantles shame. It breaks the spell that keeps us disconnected, because shame thrives in silence, but it cannot survive the light of awareness. And when you shine that light on the parts of you that once felt too heavy to name, you begin to feel something miraculous, relief, not because the pain disappears, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. This is the essence of integration, not fighting your shadow, but folding it back into you, holding it close, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Integration is not perfection. It's not the end of struggle. It's the end of fragmentation. You're no longer split between who you are and who you pretend to be. You're no longer chasing approval at the expense of your truth. You begin to walk through the world with a quiet kind of power, not because you have all the answers, but because you've made peace with the questions. Think about how much energy you've spent hiding. All the times you smiled when you want to cry. All the times you stayed silent when your truth begged to be heard. All the times you tried to be good when what you really needed was to be real. Now imagine what becomes possible when you take all that energy and redirect it toward wholeness. Imagine living with nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to fear inside yourself. That's what integration makes possible. And it starts with presence, daily awareness, small, honest choices, pausing when you're triggered, and asking what's really happening here, speaking a truth, even when it's inconvenient, letting yourself feel fully without judgment, and offering compassion to the parts of you that once only received criticism. Little by little, the walls you built begin to soften. You begin to access a different kind of confidence, not the loud kind, but the rooted kind, the kind that says, I trust myself to hold all of me, even the parts that once scared me. And as you integrate, you notice something even deeper. You become more open, not just with yourself, but with others. Because when you stop judging your own shadow, you stop judging theirs. When you stop hiding, you create space for others to step forward too. This is how healing spreads, not as a grand performance, but as a quiet invitation. Come as you are. I'll meet you there. And maybe that's the true magic of this path. Not that it makes us perfect, but that it makes us human, real, tender, brave. So if you're tired of running, tired of pretending, tired of carrying the weight of who you think you should be, let this be your permission to pause, to breathe, to turn toward yourself instead of away. Because the shadow isn't here to punish you. It's here to show you who you truly are when you're no longer afraid to be seen. And it's often vulnerability that sparks real impact, not power, not perfection, but presence. In the next part, we'll see how personal integration doesn't just change us, it changes the world around us. By now, you've seen how the shadow holds more than pain. It holds pieces of your truth, pieces of your power, pieces of your forgotten potential. But here's the part most people miss. This work, this deep personal integration, is not just for you. It's for all of us. Because the moment you reclaim the parts of yourself you once disowned, you begin to show up differently in the world. You speak more honestly. You love more fully. You lead with more depth. And that changes everything. Jung believed that personal transformation doesn't happen in isolation. He spoke of something called the collective unconscious, a vast, invisible network that connects every human soul through shared archetypes, instincts, and inherited stories. In this collective field, what one person heals in themselves becomes part of the healing for all. So when you integrate your shadow, when you bring light to your darkness, you aren't just transforming your inner world, you're shifting the entire human story, one thread at a time. Imagine this ripple effect. One person embraces their pain and becomes a parent who doesn't pass that pain forward. One person faces their fear and becomes a leader who creates from clarity, not control. One person reclaims their voice and inspires countless others to speak theirs. The impact is exponential, invisible maybe, but real. Think of the people who've shaped you most, the ones whose authenticity cracked something open in you, the ones whose courage made you braver, the ones who didn't just talk about the work, they embodied it. That's the kind of person you become. When you do shadow work from the inside out, you become a mirror for what's possible. You become a permission slip for others to go deeper. You become a living example of what it means to stop performing and start living in full alignment. This is what purpose really means. It's not just a job title. It's not a career path. It's a way of being. Your purpose is a frequency you radiate when you're no longer fragmented. It's the clarity that arises when you stop fighting yourself. It's the power that moves through you when you trust your wholeness, shadow included. And here's something else to consider. Your pain, the exact wound you thought disqualified you from purpose, might be the very reason you're uniquely qualified to fulfill it, because only someone who has walked through the fire can teach others how to survive the flames. Only someone who has wrestled with shame can sit with someone else's in silence and compassion. Only someone who has owned their darkness can hold space for light that's real. That's how the world shifts, not through perfection, but through people who are brave enough to be whole. People like you. So if you've ever wondered why you've struggled, why you felt too deep, too intense, too different, know this: it wasn't a mistake. It was preparation. It was initiation. It was life shaping you into someone who could carry a different kind of truth, a truth not born in the light, but discovered in the dark, tested by shadow, strengthened by honesty, sharpened by self-awareness. And now, the world needs that truth, not polished, not perfect, but present. The world doesn't need more performance. It needs presence. It needs people who have met themselves in the depths and return with something real to offer. And if you choose to walk this path, to integrate, to align, to live from wholeness, then your very existence becomes an act of service, not because you're trying to save others, but because you've chosen to fully show up. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is a legacy of shadow work. A legacy not written in applause, but in the quiet impact of one human soul becoming truly, radically, fully alive. So here you are, at the end of this journey, and maybe at the beginning of something far greater. You've seen what the shadow is. You've felt where it lives. You've begun to hear its voice, not as a threat, but as a guide. You've walked through the myths, the mirrors, the memory of pain, and somewhere along the way, you stopped running. You turned toward yourself, and in that turning, you reclaimed something sacred. But now the question remains, what will you do with what you found? Because knowing isn't enough. Insight isn't transformation. Understanding must become embodiment. This is a moment where theory becomes choice, where reflection becomes responsibility, where your inner work becomes outer truth. So ask yourself, what is my shadow still trying to teach me? What patterns am I ready to break? What stories am I ready to rewrite? Are there parts of me still waiting for my permission to exist, because this journey doesn't end here. This is not a finish line. It's a threshold, a doorway to a life that no longer requires you to pretend, a life where your fear and your brilliance can sit at the same table without shame, a life where your purpose isn't something you chase, but something you become, step by step, choice by choice, moment by moment. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more whole ones, more honest ones, more awake, aware, real ones. And that includes you. So speak the truth you've been afraid to say. Create the thing that's been burning in your chest. Love with the parts of you that used to hide. Lead from the pain you've turned into wisdom. Because when you embrace your shadow, you become unstoppable. Not because you have no fear, but because fear no longer owns you. You become magnetic, not because you're flawless, but because your presence is grounded in something true. And in doing so, you give others the permission to do the same. This is the ripple effect. This is how transformation spreads. This is how light expands, not by denying darkness, but by carrying it with grace. So I leave you with this. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not behind. You are becoming. Becoming the one who no longer shrinks. Becoming the one who stops asking for approval. Becoming the one who chooses depth over comfort, truth over image, wholeness over performance. That's the path now. And you are ready. This isn't the end. This is your return to yourself. And the world needs all of you. Thank you for walking this journey. Thank you for staying. Thank you for feeling. Now go, live it, be it, share it, and never again hide from the truth that was always, already within you.